Welcome to the Daily Influence, where our mission is to deliver a daily dose of positive influence that can uplift you personally or be shared within your sphere of influence. While not every episode may directly apply to your unique circumstances, we strive to provide insights and inspiration relevant to most people's daily, weekly, and monthly lives. Whether you are tuning in during the morning, noon, or night, the Daily Influence is here for you. Listen, share, and embrace the power of influence in your life. Hey everybody, Brian Smith here with the I Am Team series and the Daily Influence. Today I am going to tackle attention to details. And those of you who have followed us for a while know that we subscribe to the smart communication, the smart listening, the smart participation, the smart management system that we've developed at IA Business Advisors. And you know that the first part of SMART is specifics. And the reality is that all of SMART is attention to detail, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Those are the details that are important in everything that you do. Paying attention to the details is the equivalent of being smart in our world, in our area of influence. The details matter so much because without them, we lack context. Without context, we have risk. If we don't have full context in any situation, in any area of influence we find ourselves, there's risk. And if we don't push for those details, if we don't engage in a conversation, in a communication that gets the specifics, that gets the measurements so that we can understand attainability and realism, understand what timeliness means in that specific time and area of influence. If we don't have those attention to detail, there's risk. And we own that risk if we don't do that. So paying attention to detail is about engagement. Paying attention to details isn't just about reading something. It's about reading something, and if it doesn't fit, sit, equate, challenging it somehow. Go to somebody and find out why. Why do I feel like there is a detail missing? It might be just from ignorance, you don't know. And there is no detail missing. And you find through paying attention to details that you've elevated yourself, you've educated yourself to full understanding, to full context. And that's the goal. Paying attention to details is to get us to understand full context in every area of influence we find ourselves. Paying attention to details is listening to learn. It's asking questions. It's challenging what doesn't seem right. It's pushing our team or those in our area of influence to go a little bit farther. Paying attention to details is observing how our team is responding, how they're engaging, how they're not engaging. Sometimes there are details in the lack of participation. Sometimes there's details when nothing's happening. The silence is the detail. Should there be silence? This is where we have to get into our areas of influence, take ownership of those areas of influence, and understand what that means. Whatever your area of influence, I don't care if you're digging ditches, if you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, an architect, an engineer, a management consultant, the president or CEO of a company, you have to pay attention to the details. That means everywhere in your area of influence is your responsibility. If you choose to be in that area of influence, to have that position, whatever it is, you own every piece of the attention of detail it takes to be successful in your world. And anytime you don't pay attention to the details, you put yourself and you put those around you in your area of influence at risk. Oftentimes, even most times, that risk may never happen. And over time, when we don't pay attention to details and nothing ever comes of it, we don't ever have any kind of an incident that we have to be held accounted for. We don't or haven't paid any consequence for that lack of attention to detail. When it does happen, we want to write it off to it was an exception. or it wasn't my fault, or we justify it. But if we ever look back at some of these things, we will find that we just got lucky. For so long, we habitualized ourselves to not pay attention to details that when the one time, if we had paid attention to details, we could have circumvented that problem. We could have eliminated it. We could have protected ourselves from it, or we could have protected others from it. Hindsight is 2020, but when we create the habit of paying attention to detail, hindsight doesn't become 2020. Current sight becomes 2020. We don't have to rely on hindsight to learn most of the hard lessons. We learn them as we go, which is way better than the consequences that go with learning after the fact. The risk and dangers that go with learning after the fact. Let's pay attention to details now. Let's be smart now. I challenge you. Be smart, be specific, be measurable. Challenge attainability and realism. Be timely. Ask the right questions. Be smart about what you're doing. Pay attention to details, and you will see that your vision, your hearing, your participation becomes 2020 now, not in hindsight. I hope you have a great day. Thank you for joining us with the Daily Influence. We'll talk to you again soon.